Welcome back to Sister Brunch with me, Fanshen Cox.
And me, Anya Adams.
The fabulous Anya Adams. Now, what is this? Where are we? What are we doing here? Sister Brunch. This is Sister Brunch, and it's a podcast about Black women and non-binary folks striving and thriving in media, entertainment, and the arts. And we cannot wait to share more stories with you over the next few weeks.
Today's guest is a cinematographer and camera operator. It's the fabulous Michelle Crenshaw. And just a little history about Michelle. She has worked on films such as the iconic The Watermelon Woman and also the iconic Home Alone. Amazing. Two different, very different movies. Raised in Detroit, she graduated from Columbia College Chicago, where she took a film class and was immediately hooked. With over 30 years in the industry. Okay? She has over 60 IMDB credits. That's the Internet Movie Database, folks, for those of you that don't know. Over 60. And most recently, she's worked as the camera operator for Netflix's Hannah Gadsby Douglas and CBS's Bob Hart's Abishola. I want to talk to you about that later. And the other thing we want to talk about, Michelle, is that she was appointed to the City of Los Angeles' Workforce Development Board in 2019. She's an adjunct faculty member at USC's Cinematic Arts Program and was recently reelected to the National Executive Board of the International Cinematographers Guild, IATSE, Local 600. So Michelle, she don't slow down, but she's stopping by Sister Brunch to holla with us.
Hang out with us. Yes, Michelle, we are so incredibly honored and proud to have you on this show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for asking.
Yeah. We have so many questions, especially because the genres that you've worked in, the variety of storytelling, the iconic, as Anya said, the iconic stories. We can't wait to hear and dig in more on those. But we'd love to start off by asking you a little bit about your journey, because we want to inspire our listeners around how to get started. So take us back as far as you would like to go and let us know how you got.
Take us back past those 60 IMDb credits.
Yes, that's right. That first IMDb credit. Yeah, tell us about it. How'd you get it?
How'd you get there?
Well, it's funny because I never knew about IMDb. It came out, like in the early 90s or something? And it was actually another friend of mine who was trying to do a lot of producing work. She's the one that told me about it. I didn't even know there was such a thing as an IMDb. And it was like, oh my gosh, look at this. Wow. Okay. Anyway, and for the longest, I didn't even bother about it because a lot of the producers put that information on. Now, if you want to, you can try to, dig in deeper. To be honest with you, I could probably put on about 30 more credits that are not there. But,
Damn.
you know what it is? I'm a sister, I'm a Black woman, and a lot of people don't need to know how much you do. Because then they bug
you.
So I kind of try to be on the down low sometimes because I'm always out there making my moves.
I love it. That's an inspiration right there. When you don't want to be found, you made it, right? Like the rest of us out here, please give us a job. Michelle's like, don't call me.
No. Part of that is that I always say, especially to African American, Black and brown women, if I see them out here in the field, especially in a technical capacity, I say, listen, give me a call if you have any thoughts or questions. If I can answer, I'll be happy to, or I'll lead you somewhere else where someone can answer your question. But it's amazing how people don't really reach out as much as they should. For whatever reasons. But anyway, enough of that. Let me go back into my childhood. First of all,
I'm like, you shouldn't have said that because I'll be at your door tomorrow.
But no. You don't need to knock on my door. You can email. You can email or call me.
You're like, I didn't say you could come to my house. Okay.
But seriously, where do you live? Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Tell us about your childhood, Michelle.
Yes.
One thing I could say is I grew up in the Midwest, Detroit, Michigan, to be exact.
Mm,
was very much raised in a labor household, very much a working class family. My father was,
mhm,
at the time, he was the educational director of the Rouge plant, Local 600, because Detroit is still the motor capital of the world, at least
mhm,
as far as business is concerned.
Mm.
And my mother was a secretary, and that's how they met based on second marriage out popped me. So I like to tell people that I was a love child. I have older brothers and
Wow.
I have older brothers and sisters, a lot older. So I had a niece at the age of 4. So I have actually like
Wow.
first generation nieces and nephews that we might be like 4 years apart in age. So they're like my
mm,
brothers and
Wow.
sisters
mm,
at this point, which
mm,
is a beautiful thing. But I was always that kind of like nomadic child that used to wander around to see what was on the
mm,
other side of the road. And I was also very involved in the arts. And somewhere around 16, I picked up my first still camera. And I, for some reason,
mm,
liked the immediacy of taking photographs in observation of just people and things
mm.
and abstractions, whatever that was. So from there, after I graduated from high school, I wasn't too sure what my education, I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And it's just amazing how the universe will just guide you from one thing to the next. And I saw this ad in the photography magazine about Ray Vogue School of Design. It was in Chicago, and it was like a 2-year program for large format photography. And I started
Mm.
dabbing into 4 by 5 and 8 by 10, but not enough. So I said,
Mm.
"Oh, let me go here." So I went to Chicago, and of course, being from Detroit, which was a decent city at the time, then coming to Chicago was like, wow, okay, right in
Yeah.
the heart of Michigan Avenue and where everything was happening.
Mhm.
So I took a couple classes in, dark room and developing. And for some reason, I was thinking more at the time commercial photography. Now we're talking about in the
Mm.
early 80s. So if you think seeing someone like me now is odd, in the 80s, it was like non existent. But I
Mm.
was
Yeah.
so
Mm.
Yeah.
naive because I always was integrated, went to Catholic high schools, ended up graduating from Castech High, was a school of
Mm.
integration. So being around white people didn't scare me. I didn't care. I was just
Mhm.
doing my thing,
Right.
you know?
Right.
And so here I am in the early 80s, and I wasn't quite satisfied with the school because they weren't giving me enough for me to learn on my own. They were telling me
Mm.
things, but they weren't letting me discover. And someone told me about Columbia College. They have a huge photo
Mm.
department and they had a film department. And so I decided to take one class and, filmmaking 101, which you had nothing but Bolexes, and started to learn about
Wow.
not only taking images, but story structure, and
Mm.
I
Yes.
was hooked. By the way, I went to college later in life. So I've always been a working woman. I've been working since I was 17 years old, but I decided to go to college later in life. So here I was 21, and then I knew this is what I want to do. I can use the
Wow.
elements of art, I can use the elements of composition, I can use the elements of shadow, light, movement,
Yeah.
telling a story. I was hooked.
Mm.
And I just lived and
Yes.
breathed there for about 3 years, working in the film cage, shooting a lot of student projects, still being very
Mhm.
naive at the time as far as the real world. You have your college world, which is, very
Right.
utilitarian and very structured
Aspirational.
and
Yeah.
aspirational, and you get into your
Yeah.
little cliques. There
Mhm.
Yeah.
was like this
Mhm.
one guy, he wanted to be a director. I knew I wanted to be a cinematographer. So we used to work on each other's projects all the time. And then after that, it's like I was also an intern at the school. So I was a TA,
Mhm.
Mhm.
teacher's assistant, very technical, wasn't as scared of the equipment. One thing led to
Wow.
another. Then I graduated, and then it was like, okay, now what I'm going to do. And at the time, it was more like in the mid 80s there were 2 filmmakers that really influenced me just to be in this world of cinema. It was Spike Lee and
Yeah.
Usain Palsy, because Spike Lee,
Oh, yes.
it was just during that time when She's Gotta Have It, and then also
Mhm.
Bed-Stuy Barbershop from NYU,
Mhm.
Yep.
and then when I saw Sugarcane Alley, which is
Mm.
Usain
Mhm.
Palsy's
Mhm.
debut film, it was like, "Yeah, okay, black people can make films."
This is Sister Brunch with Fanshen and Anya Adams. Stay tuned for more of our conversation with the inspiring and powerful and amazing guest, cinematographer, and camera operator, Michelle Crenshaw. And we are back. Check out more of this conversation on Thriving Behind the Scenes with Michelle Crenshaw. What was your first big break? Like Watermelon Woman, I'm assuming, or was there something before that that really propelled you and started you having the relationships that would kind of lead to everything you've done since then?
Well, it was a combination of things because even when I was in film school about ready to leave, there was a social group of women that, we would shoot and work on each other's projects. This guy
Mm,
named Floyd Webb, he started this film festival called Blacklight Film Festival
Wow.
back in the day. And then I was
nice.
also part of a film festival organization in Chicago called Women in Directors Chair. And at that time, it was like the first international film festival for women, directors or producers or people who were instrumental in making the project. So that were, it was very
Mm,
exciting because it was very
yeah.
collaborative, more of a community. Now, you didn't necessarily make a lot of money, but still you were
Right.
out there, doing your stories and so there was a huge network from there. And then one of
Mm,
my instructors, his Dave Morenz, I was his TA. And at the time, Chicago was starting to boom as far as filmmaking. That's
mm,
where Andy
mhm,
Davis and John Hughes and all these features,
mm,
when they started leaving New York,
Mm.
or California for whatever reasons. They were coming into Chicago. I missed the Brothers days, but I came after that.
Oh.
mm.
So my,
Mm,
my instructor, because he knew I was technically inclined and I was the it girl. It was quite clear I had it, what it took to
Wow.
manage, cameras and lenses and filters and batteries and whatnot. So
yeah.
the union was opening up in Chicago. Basically, they needed black, brown, and ethnic minorities and women because there weren't any.
Yeah.
Usually, when I tell my students and when I talk about my history, you have to think about history of America. I mean, right now we
Mm.
have the DEI going on in this country.
Mm,
Well, back in the
mhm.
80s, they were still talking about the same thing. So they would let a few people
Yep.
in,
Yeah.
and
Right.
once those few
Right.
Right.
people in, that's when the door closes. But
Yeah.
Right.
but like mom says, preparation and opportunity meet. That's what luck is all about. So I just happened to be in the right
Mm.
place at the right time, and I developed enough skills where people were interested in allowing me in because
Wow.
filmmaking industry is still a big industry of nepotism, which I have nothing against
Mm,
nepotism at all, but you have to really want it and sacrifice, network, and know who that's going to embrace you for who you are as an
Yeah.
individual and allow you to grow.
Too often, how it happens in Hollywood is somebody who has never done anything, somebody meaning a white male, right? Who has done very little or has very little experience, didn't go to school, and because of nepotism, they get hired. Versus someone like you, where you talk about it being luck in the sense of that timing and the zeitgeist, but at the same time, you were prepared and you had something special. This is different, even once you started to have those relationships.
Yes, yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about the Watermelon Woman? Because I feel like this movie has had kind of a resurgence in the last years. You know, it's become this kind of iconic film that people refer to. But like, I know when you made it, it probably was very hard.
Well, making the film wasn't so hard because it was that grassroots indie
Hmm.
way of making films. Now, how I met
Hmm.
Cheryl Dunye is because of my activism and working on a women in directors chair. Because I was also at
Oh
one point
wow!
I became a vice
Love it.
president working with Nalani McClendon, which she was president at the time of Women in Directors Chair. And so that's how I met Cheryl because we had one of her experimental films in the film festival. And she contacted me somewhere in the early 90s saying, girl, when she got her NEA money, that she wanted to shoot this
Hmm.
film. Like, oh, sure, okay. Now, it took several
Wow.
years from that till we actually shot. But by then, I was working all the time as a camera assistant. So I could
Mm.
afford to go to Philly and hang out for a month or so
Right.
and help her do Watermelon Woman. You know, it was exciting. It was fun. I had a small crew, which was good. But yeah, 20 years later, it just kind of resurged. It was ahead of its time. That's what it was.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%.
socially, the message that I
Yeah.
was trying to deal with. So it's just now it's just caught up.
Yeah.
Cheryl Denier, she's great at promoting herself. See, I'm the type of person, especially as a cinematographer, you know, I don't need to be out in front. I'm the VP.
Hmm.
Mhm.
I'm the one that's going to
Mhm.
support and be in the
Mhm.
background, making
Yes.
sure things are moving. I think that's how a lot of director of photographies and photographers and
Mhm.
cinematographers are. We're not the director. We're
Right.
facilitating with the
Mhm.
director to carry on a vision, to tell a story. And it doesn't matter what genre it is, whether it's a documentary, a music video, television, features, but you're there to help facilitate with that in mind, using the tools and the palette of your gear and your light and direction, composition, framing.
This is just such a beautiful conversation. I was having to stop and say that I feel blessed right now. This is beautiful. And it's so true, right? That DPs, a lot of crew they don't need to be out in front or visible. But you, Michelle, are a gem. The fact that still there are so few Black women DPs, still, we need to shout your name from the rooftops because we need Black women and Black girls to know that this is something they can do.
I mean, not to toot our own horn, but we are pushing you out front in this
Yeah.
podcast. So whether you give us your home address or not, people gonna
Yeah,
know your name.
we gonna be in touch.
Well, that's good. And let me tell you something. This is how it really came down. Let's go back to Watermelon Woman. So I've known Cheryl Denier, ever since then, and she's had her struggles. Thanks to Ava
Mhm.
Hmm.
DuVernay, she's opened up the door for literally
Hmm.
99% of the Black female directors that are out here doing
Yeah.
stuff now,
Hmm.
especially for television as well as
Yeah.
features. My shout out to Ava DuVernay, which I haven't had the
Yes.
opportunity to work with her yet, maybe someday. But with
Hmm.
Cheryl Denier, we've maintained a friendship. And there were some other things that she wanted me to do, but I got to the point in my career that I couldn't work for free because my
Hmm.
time is valuable. I'm an older woman. I
Yes.
have life, I have
Mhm.
family, and my time commitment to myself has changed, right?
Yes.
So
Hmm.
at one
Hmm.
point, I contacted Cheryl and I said, girl, especially it happened during the pandemic. I said, I'm ready to slay here. Okay. I'm tired of being quiet. I work with a
Okay.
lot of people. I know as much, if not more, because I've also
Yep.
went up the ranks working in camera. So I started as an intern.
Mm.
I was a loader.
Yes.
Then I became a second assistant. Then I became a focus puller. Then I became an operator. That's when you met me, Anya. I was an operator, and I'm still
Yep.
an operator, but believe me, my whole career, I wanted to be a cinematographer. But in the mid 80s,
Oh,
there were barely any women, let alone someone.
yeah.
And I'm a real sister. I'm a black woman with natural hair. They weren't
Yes.
ready for me. That's all
Yes,
it
she
is.
is.
White
Yep.
men do have a hard time listening to women, period, let alone a sister. But
Yep.
neither
Right?
here nor there. So I told Cheryl Denier I was ready to slay. And out of the blue, like within a week or two, she calls, "Girl, get ready." Just like that. I go, "What are you talking about?"
Yes.
Anyway, that's what led me to doing 4 episodes of Delilah. And because I did 4 episodes of Delilah, the union contacted me and said, "Okay, are you going to re rate to DP or are you going to stay an operator?" Well, needless to
Oh,
say,
Mm.
I re rated to DP. So, yeah, you all call me
wow.
now.
Yes.
Hi, it's Anya, and you're listening to Sister Brunch. We'll be right back. And if you haven't already, follow us on Twitter at Sister Brunch, Instagram at Sister Brunch Podcast, and Facebook at facebook.com/Sister Brunch Podcast. Some of our research shows that you actually went back to your hometown to work as an artist in residence. And was that from your DP work? That's amazing.
That was because of my relationship. Another sister, it Juanita Anderson. She's a professor at Wayne State University that teaches media arts, and she's also a producer. She's the one that got me the artist in residency to come back to Michigan, which was great. And
Wow.
we're currently working on a documentary called the Hastings Street Blues Project. And it's really the history of blues before Motown and Black Bottom in
Oh,
Detroit. That's a
Oh.
wow.
documentary. That's a long-term thing.
Wow.
But that's why I
Yes.
was there because I'm also a show. Face it, I'm a social activist too. I'm not just a
Mhm.
filmmaker.
Yes.
You know, I'm
Yes.
also a radical, an activist, an artist. I'm kind of
Yes.
all that.
We always like to ask a question, and if you're uncomfortable, you don't have to share it, but especially because you talked about one not working for free anymore, which is important for
Mhm.
us to draw that line, and then two, going from operator to DP. Are you comfortable talking about salary ranges, or just for our listeners to know what might they be able to make if they were to work as a cinematographer, or any of those jobs that you've described moving up to that?
Well, when you work in the union, you know, there's set prices,
Mhm.
which you can go
Mhm.
online and find out what the rates are for specific classifications. When you work non union, it's negotiable and it becomes what you're
Right.
comfortable with. And if you get hired to do the job, production assistants off the cuff used to be what, 125, 150. I don't know what it is
A
now.
day. Yeah.
um,
Mhm.
the same thing for assistants. It could be around 200, maybe 250. I'm thinking in terms of non-union. When you work non-union, you're just paying an hourly rate, whatever you negotiate for that. uh,
Mhm.
Union jobs is 8 hours, time and a half after eight, double time, either 12 or 14. Your hourly rates can be anywhere from 20 something to 100 and something. Let's just say the rates are all over the place, so we can't get that
Mm.
specific.
Mhm.
Okay, and it
Mhm.
is
Mhm.
Yeah.
negotiable. Especially non-union, it's negotiable depending on what it
Mm.
is, because you're
Mhm.
paying for service. I mean, we all participate in giving our service, but
Mhm.
also we have years behind that service that's going to help
Yes.
propel whatever the project is. So don't be
Mhm.
so
Mhm.
Mhm.
intimidated by working with someone that has a lot of experience because we're all there to support you and your project.
Yes.
Right.
We're
Right.
Right,
not
right,
trying to
right.
sell you anything. We're just there to support and might have easier ways to facilitate something that you might have to take a while to figure out as someone who's a technical person.
Do you have any advice for young people of color coming up in this industry in terms of how to navigate with people that, as we move through this, there are people that have less experience than you and also more experience, but just any tips and tricks or thoughts about what it's like to work, especially below the line where you're working with a lot of male energy a lot of times. Do you have any thoughts or words of wisdom there?
I guess the bottom line is whatever you're offering to a project, regardless of whether you're in hair, makeup, wardrobe, camera, assistant director, used to be, I know you're
Yes.
directing now. Um, just
Mhm.
try to be as good as you can with
Yes.
that aspect, because 'cause you're not there to do
Yep.
anything else, okay? You're
Oof,
there to
that's good.
provide a service for that specific thing and try to be very good and efficient at it, and other people
Mm,
notice. I
Hmm.
got
yeah.
95% of my work and my jobs have always been through word of mouth. Even if
Yep.
they ask for my resume, 99% of the time, I knew I had the job before they asked for it because that became a
Hmm.
formality,
Yeah.
maybe for legal
Hmm.
reasons. So it's
Hmm.
what you do in the moment of the position you're in that will lead you to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing. And as a camera person, and this is one thing I'm working with now with a few young ladies, because I know a lot of people that want to shoot. Everyone wants to be a cinematographer, but they don't know the
Hmm.
basic foundations of what it takes to
Yes.
get to a place
Okay.
where you can really grow and start asking for, decent money to achieve
Hmm.
whatever you're trying to achieve. So they start doing a lot of stuff, but not mastering. I guess I'm kind
Yeah.
of old
Hmm.
school because
Mm,
I grew up in the arts, and I used to look at Renaissance paintings and things and saw how
mm,
light was hitting something that even if it was painted, in the direction of shadows, and I
mm.
really wanted to master the art of cinematography. So I
Okay.
Hmm.
enjoyed assisting with some of the most well-known male director of photographers out here, and I watched what they did, how they worked the set, how they worked
Hmm.
with the crew, how the diplomacy of working with other people that you might only work with for a short amount of time and you won't see them again for months, or
Mm,
if you
Hmm.
ever see them again. Just focus. I know there's people who are assisting in one job, they're operating on another, they're doing it, but you're not really mastering the craft. And that makes the
mm.
difference
Hmm.
of
That's good.
survival. That's why I've
Yeah.
been in it for 30 something years. And to be
Mm,
honest with you,
Yeah.
at this point, me trying to do something else is literally impossible because this is all I know.
this
I
is
know
what
the
and you
language,
know
I
it
know the
well.
culture, and
Yeah.
unfortunately, because of pandemic, my biggest fear, and Anya, you can probably say something about this. Because of the pandemic, it's isolating people more because you won't be
Mm,
able to do the set visits. I won't
yep.
be able to bring people on necessarily just to observe
Yeah.
unless they
Yes.
have another foot in the door that allows them in.
Yes.
Because with the COVID and the testing, it's actually going to keep more people out, I hate to say it.
No, you're right. Everything is closed down. It's just so much tighter, and it's hard. It's really hard.
The institutions are out there, with the streaming platforms, with YouTube, with Instagram, you can get
Yeah.
together with your friends and start telling. I mean, Issa Rae is the example.
Yes.
Yeah.
Look what she did,
Yeah.
Yes.
and
From a
now
YouTube
she's like
show
the
to
queen of
everything.
HBO.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's really no excuse other than you're not putting in the work.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm. I love it. Are there ways that our listeners can support you, Michelle? Because we love you. Yeah, how can we support you?
You can support me. For all you women out here, I'm not sure like where you're at in your stage of growth in media making. Just you can support me by you doing the work and you representing and putting the stories out there. Representation does matter, and we need to
Yeah.
start telling our own stories and taking control
Yes.
of our own images. That's what you can do for me. And eventually, if you don't see me, you're going to see one of my proteges because there are a few
I
women
love
out
it.
here that I have trained. So
Love it.
Oh,
Love it.
that is such a beautiful way to end this,
Thank
Michelle.
you. We're so glad you came on.
Thank you for listening to Sister Brunch with me, Anya Adams, and the fabulous Fanshen Cox. That was our conversation with Michelle Crenshaw. Visit sisterbrunch.com to find out more about Michelle and how to support her upcoming projects.
Make sure you follow us on Instagram at Sister Brunch Podcast, and we're also on Twitter if you prefer over there at Sister Brunch. And also, if you are one of the perhaps older of our listeners, you might still be on Facebook. We're at facebook.com/Sister Brunch Podcast. If you've got questions for us for our Ask Sister Brunch segment, visit sisterbrunch.com. Fill out our question form. It's very easy. You can ask anything you want, and we might just read it on the air. Also, be sure to sign up for our monthly newsletters. You're going to get job tips, you're going to get viewing recommendations, and so much more. And do not forget to subscribe, rate, and review our show on iTunes or wherever you listen to the podcast. Your support is so important to us, and we appreciate you all.
Our senior producer is Sonata Lee Narcisse. Our show producer is Brittany Turner. Our executive producer is Cristobal and Sia Boade. We'd like to acknowledge the fact that the land we record our podcast on is the original land of the Tongva people, for those of us who live in Los Angeles. Can't wait to see you next time. Take care, y'all.